Hi, this is Amanda Morgan from notjustcute.com, and it's time for First Friday Q&A for the month of May. So it has been a gorgeous spring day here. I hope that spring has come to you wherever you are. We're going to jump right into these questions. There are three great questions, and I think they're going to be helpful to a lot of people. The first one comes from Karen, and she says, I'm a preschool teacher in a public school and constantly feel pressure from parents and other teachers, especially the kindergarten teachers, to teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I embed such activities into our daily routine and activities, but do not give worksheets or writing practice sheets. After a year of preschool, students go from my preschool classroom to the kindergarten classroom, which is a full day kindergarten, where the children often sit for 60 minutes at a time and no center time or free choice time is scheduled. This is a far cry from my classroom, where for 60 minutes of the 180 minutes children are in my classroom, they are allowed some free choice time. Several parents of current kindergarten students who were my preschoolers last year have mentioned that one of the weaknesses of my room is not enough focus on letters and numbers. What are some ways I can deal with this pressure? Is learning all the letters of the alphabet by the end of preschool a developmentally appropriate goal? What are the best ways to teach letters and numbers at the preschool level? Well, Karen, I think this is a really great question that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to. It's a really typical situation, I think. So first of all, to address your first question about developmentally appropriate goals, I think when we're talking about developmentally appropriate practice, we have to remember that there is the overall goal that it can be generalized to an age group, but there's also that individual aspect. So as an overall age group, I think a lot of children are capable of learning all of the letters before going into kindergarten, but I definitely think there are some that's not an appropriate goal for them. I would say generally probably they should know at least half of the letters before they go into kindergarten, and they should be building that alphabetical knowledge, letter recognition skills. So it's something that you can work towards. I think that's appropriate, but I don't think you can set a hard and fast, they must know all of these letters. I think that becomes a difficult issue. But I think more importantly, I think some of your other questions can offer more help here. I think the first thing that you can do is to educate your parents as to how you're teaching in your classroom so that they can learn to recognize it and appreciate it as well. So maybe when you start off the school year, explain to them how your room works, what your learning objectives are for different activities, what you're expecting children to get out of different learning activities, so that they can see that you have an objective and that they can learn to recognize it for themselves as well. And I think communicating with the parents throughout the year can also help you out with this as well. So if you're communicating with them through newsletters and things to help them understand what you're learning about, what your goals are for that month or that unit or whatever segment you might be using, so that they can, again, recognize what you're teaching within your format that you're learning. Or that you're using for the children to learn, so that they can recognize it as well. And I think if you communicate with the parents and help them to see how you're teaching by sending home some home activities, so maybe say this is an activity that the kids have really enjoyed, here's how you do it, and here's what your kids learn from it. That has some great payoffs because it helps the parents to see what your teaching style is and how it works for kids, and it helps them to see what it is that the children are learning through these activities, and they begin to recognize that learning. I think you also need to educate and communicate with your parents about how children learn and what it is they need to learn, so that they begin to understand that literacy and mathematical literacy, they are not just about recognizing letters and recognizing numbers, that there are a lot of other foundational skills that need to be laid at this time in their children's development. So helping them to recognize those components of emergent literacy, of numeracy, and all these other concepts. If you can educate the parents and other teachers so they recognize some of those other objectives for these children at this level in their development, it'll help them to appreciate it and to encourage it and support it as well. I think also making sure that you have an assessment piece is helpful for you as a teacher, obviously, but also in communicating with parents and other teachers. Now, I know some early educators bristle a little bit with the word assessment because they think of standardized testing, but that's not what I'm referring to. We need some way to assess what children are learning, what level they're at, so that we can inform our teaching and adjust it to meet their needs appropriately, and so that we can recognize what concepts they are grasping and what maybe isn't getting through quite yet and needs to be taught in a different way. So you can do assessments in a number of ways. You can do informal assessments, which are great because you see them actually using the information in a realistic setting and in a meaningful way. So if you just make some anecdotal notes about a way that a child used a specific concept, and keep those in a file so that you can go back and see that they counted to 20 when they were counting out these pieces of a toy or a snack or something like that, then you know that they can count to 20, 1-to-1 ratios, and whatever notes you may have or may be able to take out of that. You can also do some assessments. You can set up your activities or small group activities with an objective in mind, and then observe the children as they do it and make notes as to who is grasping that concept and showing it and who is not. You can also do some playful assessments where you have a game that's created specifically for the concept that you want to test, and in a one-to-one situation, have them, or 2 or 3 in a small group, play this game or whatever activity it may be, and then make notes as to whether or not they have grasped the concept that you're testing, whether that's recognizing letters or numbers or counting or sorting or doing patterns. Making notes as you're doing these activities that embed the learning so that you can show someone with those notes or with whatever records you're keeping that they have grasped these concepts. That will help give a little bit more credence to what you're doing, even to other people that may not understand that system of teaching that you're using. Then also recognize that it is appropriate to use some direct instruction techniques as long as you're keeping them very short. So maybe just a 2-minute spurt of a direct instruction of a concept is still good learning or good teaching practice for young children if they're very short and engaging. And then sometimes that will help convince other people that are skeptic. They'll at least see that direct instruction piece, and it is also effective for the children. So that's something else you might consider working in as well. I'll also put some links down here of some other posts that I've used about teaching literacy and about what emergent literacy is and the components of emergent literacy. And these might be useful for you as a teacher, or also just for communicating that to parents and other teachers. And do it not in a defensive way that you're defending your position, but just to share your enthusiasm about what you do and how you do it and how children learn. I'll link some things that talk about how children learn best when we're talking about literacy and mathematical literacy or numeracy. I'll also link to a book. This is a little spoiler alert. I'm going to be reviewing Fountas and Pinnell's new book called Literacy Beginnings, which I have just loved so far. I think it's such a great resource for pre-kindergarten teachers. So I will link that as well. I think it's a really great book. And then I'll have some other resources. And if any other readers have some comments or resources that would help out for Karen and for other teachers with a similar situation, go ahead and put that in the comments section. The next question comes from Sarah, who's also a preschool teacher, and another common problem. There is a 4-year-old that she teaches who is totally potty trained, but he's begun to have accidents again during the day. He stays totally dry at night, according to his mom, but he's having these accidents from time to time during the day. So usually with this type of situation, the first thing I would check for is for some kind of a traumatic event or big change in their life, especially one that's causing them to feel like they have less control. That can tend to set off something like this. And Sarah's already specified in her email that that's not the case with this boy. So what my next guess would be is that he's just getting really engrossed in whatever activity he's doing and either forgetting or postponing it too long. And that's a common thing. Now, when we're talking about toileting, potty training, it's important to recognize that the important piece is for them to have the self-control, for them to master it themselves, to have the autonomy. And that's a really big piece here. So the first thing I would say is make sure that you're not forcing. You can't force someone to go to the bathroom. It defeats the whole purpose, and it just doesn't work. But what you can do is sometimes just give some reminders, build it into your routine more often. With my own sons, more in a home situation, rather than setting a timer and saying you have to go to the bathroom right now, which doesn't help them to learn their own body cues. I would just maybe be more deliberate in announcing that I was going to the bathroom, or, does anybody need to go to the bathroom right now? I'm just headed that way if anybody wants to go, just to kind of remind them, have them check and think, do I not? But I think generally with boys that are missing those cues and having accidents during the day, especially during their playtime, they're just becoming engrossed in what they're doing. And I think that time is going to be the biggest helper here. Involve him in cleaning up and having responsibility for what's going on to whatever extent he's able to do that, so that he has some personal responsibility. And just don't make any demeaning comments. Just, oh, that is so strange because I know you know how to use the bathroom. Just remember that next time. Just make sure you get there soon enough, and just kind of be nonchalant about it. Have him help you clean up, take care of things, and move on with your day. I really think within 1 to 2 weeks that generally takes care of itself. But if you're finding that you need more than time here, that it's taking 1 to 2 weeks and not making any difference, if you need other tips and tricks is kind of what she was asking for here. I know for some of my boys, it was a special pair of underpants for when it was Buzz Lightyear. It was the only one that did it. And he loved them so much that he did not want them to be wet. And so he was more conscientious, and that's finally what flipped the trigger for him. For others, you might need a chart. I really hesitate to use that until it's just a last minute, or not last minute, but last resort, to use for him, because he is capable of doing it. He just needs to do it. He needs the time to do it. If you feel that that is something you absolutely need, just make sure that it is focused on specifically staying dry all day or whatever it may be, and that it can be phased out. And I don't like the idea of handing out treats for him all the time, because this is something he's capable of doing, and it's not you don't get a treat every time you go to the bathroom. It's just something you do for yourself because you're 4, because you're grown up. But maybe having some sort of celebration, maybe with his whole family or something that they can enjoy together to celebrate this accomplishment. But like I said before, I would really hesitate to use that. I really think giving him a couple of days will help him come to that himself. The last one comes from Tina, and I just think this is such a great question. She says, this is her question: is spaciness a developmental characteristic of young children? She says, my 4.5-year-old daughter used to be extremely independent. She goes on to say that now she's just constantly living in a fantasy land. Unless I actually hand her her PJs, shoes, coat, or whatever immediate task is at hand, she doesn't hear and or listen to what I asked her to do. It's as though my words don't even register in her head. She's too busy dancing around, playing with cars or trains, and talking. So just a quick, short answer, Tina, is yes, this is typical behavior. They're very imaginative at this age, and they are in their own world oftentimes. And that's a great thing. That shows a lot of cognitive development, a lot of symbolic thinking, which is a huge milestone for these young children. So just as she mentions in her email, there's a book from Vivian Paley called A Child's Work that's about children and their imagination and the storylines that they create and what they learn from them. And one of my favorite things she says in there is that we can guide behavior by getting into the storyline and respecting the flow of the story. So you could use that. She's a princess and she's too busy doing her princess things. Then tie that into what you need her to do. And now she's the princess and she needs to put on her princess pajamas or a different costume because she's whatever, feeds into the story, and just build it into the story of what she needs to do. If you respect the story she's creating and become a part of it, sometimes they're more likely to come along. It may also help to build more of a routine so that she knows what's going to be expected at a certain time and gets into more of a routine. That often helps children to comply more quickly because it's just a routine. It's the flow of the day. It's the way things go. And then I'll also link, there's a post that I've written before about helping children to learn, or to listen, helping children to listen. And I'll link that post here as well so that, and it's just basically those same things, recognizing that sometimes you do have to get down, make eye contact, get into their story so you make sure that they really hear and understand what you're saying. It is a typical thing for young children. And it's a great thing because it shows a lot of great things are going on in her mental development, and it can be taxing on parents. But if you can maybe do some of those things, just incorporate the storyline into the things that you need to get done. And if you can incorporate a routine that keeps those tasks more consistent, that may help as well. So good luck with that, Tina. Enjoy the stories she's creating and being a part of them, and hopefully she'll come along and be a little bit more independent again. So again, if you have questions for me for First Friday Q&A, you can send those to questions@notjustcute.com, and hopefully we can work those into the First Friday Q&A for June. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you then.